nothing more than slave drivers. So now all we're doing is we're clearing it up. So the corruption that still remains in those places, as we are still listening to a man who's now possibly has become even more so hostile to the environment in which he found himself a part of. And I'm talking about Mr. Trump. Because Mr. Trump now has not just found himself as being part of an element, which once he deemed and said to himself that he was going to drain the swamp, he was going to do away with that would-be evil, corrupt element, only to find himself become a close friend of that element. And now he has once again become a great enemy of that element based upon the fact that now that he is no longer president, he is more prominent for the people are concerned. Why? Because now that he's no longer president, he owes no more allegiance to those with the corrupt people that are in that area and at that level, whereby now he's standing out to speak against them. And thereby, because he himself claims no would-be honor, to be classified amongst a bunch of would-be so-called liars, manipulators, murderers, rapists, child molesters, he has found himself now becoming nothing more than an enemy of the state, the enemy of the E-state, and whereby to be part of a land that now has deemed him a criminal, based upon the fact that they still have those leaders that they can use and they can point to as if though they're nothing more than watchdogs, because they're not great enough to be guard dogs, they're just watchdogs. They're not great enough to be attack dogs because they're weak and they're classified as watchdogs. All they can do is lie on the porch and watch. They lie on the porch of the White House. They lie on the porch of the FBI center. They lie on the porch of what is known as the United Nations. They lie on the porch of nothing more than the Parliament. They lie on the porch of nothing more than the House of Commons. They lie on the porch of nothing more than the White House. They lie there being nothing more than watchdogs because they're not great enough to be attack dogs. Neither are they great enough to be guard dogs, so they just classify themselves as watchdogs, and all they do is lie there and watch, while everything goes to hell in a handbasket at their and on their account to be classified as some weak leader or such. The United Nations, we do know that now. When looking at the so-called Epstein White House, once upon a time a would-be so-called memorial that would be standing on any international world as being one that could be looked up to. It could be guarded to be one that would at least be a nation of freedom, a nation of truth, a nation of freedom based upon peace, a nation that would have been classified as a wealthy nation, whereby it would at least be a wealthy nation to give charity to nations that were less fortunate than itself. But after due time and historical facts of research now, we have already recognized to be nothing more than a nation of manipulation, whereby to claim once again this Native American process, whereby they claim it to be of natural birth or native birth or some naturalizing of one being adopted into a nation, whereby the nation in which they're being adopted to has no true birth certificate because it has no true birth record. And when claiming to be the birth of a nation, you must ask them who was their fathers and who were their mothers that would have been at least issued on this so-called birth certificate. When that nation was birthed, they would have had to have a mother and father. And that piece of document has not yet been found anywhere on this planet or the ones that have been, I would say, visited since the year of 1960. So we're talking about Mars. We're talking about Jupiter. We're talking about Pluto, the islands of Neptune. All of these areas have been visited by aircraft that has left the United States of America. It has left Russia. It has left China. It has left Japan. It has left Canada. All of these astronauts or astronauts that we call them have traveled to these foreign lands. None of them can or have brought back a document that will be a document of proof to tell you how and when the United States of America came into existence and who were the natives that were there prior to them becoming the so-called natural born, or those that would have been classified to be none other than those that would have been adopted by way of some so-called citizenship test in which they would have passed on about the red, white, and blue flag, or even the so-called would-be Star-Spangled Banner, as a would-be so-called token of being able to at least pass a 50-question exam to become what would be known as a United States of American citizen, because there's no proof of where the United States of America ever came from, documented or no other kind of would-be statement of truth. And all the red people that are still there in the United States of America, and I know the United Nations, when speaking to American, I begin to talk about white boys or white men or white girls and white women and white would-be children. They began to believe that I'm talking racism or talking prejudice, but this has has nothing to do with it. According to the true words of even those who are claiming to be Anglo-Saxons, from a world in which everyone is still determining where did these Anglo-Saxons ever come about and where did they come from. No one has found them even during the Herculean times of Hercules. Nobody has found them during the Ulysses or the Ulysses times of so-called would be a world of beginning. No one has found them even during the time that might be classified as a Paulinian, which would have been during the Christian movement. No one has been able to find any such animal that is classified as an Anglo-Saxon, American, or any other type of Anglo-Saxon of the world. Whereby all the world now has duly departed from even using the term Anglo, knowing that these men of an Anglo world were those that were possibly angry, but they were not Anglo. And thereby they would have made up many stories on their own, and even classified their own would-be heroes. They would have built heroes out of men during the Herculean times of Hercules or Ulysses times during Ulysses. So they would have had all of these would-be so-called moments of creating something that they would classify to be history that was not history at all. Remembering that history brings about a form of truth called historical fact. And during their times, there were no historical facts. Neither have there ever been any recorded. Neither have there now been any of those historian times ever been able to be revealed. For now, they're still searching for proof that the Herculeans existed, or the Ulysses. No one has found a true Hercules yet. No one has found a true Ulysses yet, along with trying to find Caesar. Everyone is still trying to claim that Caesar was someone of a nature of a leader, but there's no proof. And all the historical histories that's been written, they are false claims, and they can be proven that they're false claims. They have found locations of what they deem to be Jesus the Christ. But those Jesus the Christ in which they claim so existed once upon a time, they have found that the locations in which they say he was in was a lie, because they have traced the true Jesus the Christ, and he lived no farther than Dallas, Texas. He lived no farther than Fort Worth, Texas, or in between. So they know to claim him as being in some place called Israel, over in a place they would classify to be Jerusalem, knowing that the city of Jerusalem has 4 different Jerusalems inside of this would-be so-called Israel, in which was classified to be back in the 1940s, knowing that after 1954, that same name of Jerusalem has changed positions, and it has changed areas, we would say, more than 100 times. And just during would-be Mr. Trump's time, in which he deemed to be leadership, there came an argument from Israel of wanting to change the name of Jerusalem once again. And believe it or not, upon a disagreement by Mr. Trump, Jerusalem remained in the same place that it was at. However, the people of Israel, known as Israelis, still chose to change the name of Jerusalem, and thereby now they actually be classified a 5th location of a place classified as Jerusalem. And I'm sure by now they've set up enough would-be so-called, we might say, places of positions where you may go to this 5th Jerusalem, and you just might find that they have already created another tomb for where Jesus the Christ was buried. You will also find that they have already set forth another would-be so-called road, of a brick road, in which he would have had to walk down bearing a cross over his shoulders. In other words, what I'm saying, these are commercial areas. These commercial areas have sold well to the government. They have sold well to the people of the planet. However, they have not given neither do they bear any truth of any type of allegiance to what mankind must need to realize and recognize in order to remain under what we know to be truth and freedom. This will never bring on peace, because the argument will always remain. However, for one to argue, was he born in Bethlehem, or was he born in Judea, or was he born in some obscure place in Egypt? There'll be a question of a battle whereby the disagreement will remain throughout all of the universe, and especially in these different nations. But everyone wants to bear this would-be resemblance, or this would-be connection, or even by right, this blood right. Everyone wants to claim as being the closest to the ideal would-be initial man of the planet, whereby they all would be able to have a greater advantage when it comes down to an inheritance to the land or to the world or to the planet. And this inheritance, they believe, will bring on an added would-be possessions and privileges, whereby we know for a fact, again, that those areas now that claim to be the Holy Land cannot be the Holy Land, for they themselves, the majority of the people that are there, came from what is known as the United States of America as of this day. We do know that even though they have dead blood, DNA, and RNA tests, as for China now, and a lot of the people there in China are being classified now as having COVID virus once again, they're claiming that millions and millions of Chinese are beginning to be infected every day by what was deemed once upon a time as COVID virus. They're being infected once again. And they're saying it's high and on the rise again for the people being infected. But the majority of them are still claiming to feel fine. Along with those in Japan now, they're claiming that a lot of them are being infected. Just recently, one of the prior would-be leaders of Japan was classified to be infected by the COVID virus for a second time of reading positive. But we already know that he also has already admitted to feeling just fine. Which this is not a would-be COVID, would-be movement, COVID being quiet or unknown. But it's known to the whole world that this infection just so happens to bring everyone back to a point where, again, knowing that the Garden of Eden, we're talking about the center of the earth, will still always be classified as the United States of America and will be classified as the Northwest or the Western world, based upon the fact that it's truly the Eastern world in which one might want to identify themselves with. So we do know that the Western world is truly the Eastern world that everyone must identify themselves with, because that is where life began. No one can argue that, because it's already been proven as well. The average would be so-called pyramids are still being found in places like Mississippi and Louisiana and Alabama. And these pyramids have also been, by scientific development, they have been declared to be older than the would-be so-called pyramids of Giza or Giza. These pyramids are less in age than those that have been found in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. And thereby, it brings a truth to the argument in which so now still is on the earth that has caused many battles and wars and fights historically, knowing that the lie still remains, whereby you have some corrupt leaders that are still in command. And even though they're beginning to find their health falling bad, they will begin to become weaker. And these are the things that have already been written. So I want everyone in the United Nations to recognize these are not my words, but you have these words that are historically placed inside of a historical book known as the Holy Bible, that is also not just part of a would-be so-called religious movement, but it's also a book of historical facts, which wins the case and in court once again. And it says that they will become weaker but wiser. This weaker but wiser is going to put them in a position where their wiseness will cause them to be destroyed, and the weakness will cause them to be eliminated. And that's those that now in your place in your leadership position, that they'll become so smart, wise, to the fact of being able to cover up, to hide those things in which they are corrupt with, and they are doing as nothing more than criminal activity. They will become wise enough and smarter to hide those things, but their weakness to be able to control it or to protect against it will be their demise. The United Nations, as we move forward, knowing that the finance system is falling apart, it will collapse. All finance systems will totally collapse, and only then will one have to provide a new means of being able to classify themselves as having a financial system or a currency system. They will have to come up with a new one. We have already done that. We don't have to worry about coming up with it. So the computer already recognizes it. And the computer is already asking them the question, if not this, then this. In other words, it's saying you will have nothing. They will not be able to come with any substitute whatsoever that will be able to take the place of what they have built on this planet to be a finance system. And it will collapse. Whereby the system whereby we have brought to them has already depleted and deleted all of the old systems. And thereby, they will either accept or they will reject. There will be no in-between. It's either truth or it's a lie. It's life or death. They will either concur or they will be curved to the left of hell. This is a fact. I'm only giving them the reality of what's happening right now so that every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that the system in which now they're dealing with, it is one whereby he is brought back to the world. It is partially part of the laws of God, based upon the ecclesiastical and the common and international laws of the universe. All these things shall be brought forth based upon sovereignty, based upon transparency, and based upon the rules of law, which have always stood for righteousness. Thereby, I now can quickly take a break.
Thank you, sir. And yes, family, now, just as he explained, the new system